No intro, no music. No, we don't deserve that. Game day grades in order. Quarterbacks, 2 coordinators, F, D minus, C, D, F, B, B, C minus, C minus, B plus. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you, Greg Arthur. I'm done. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast with no rain, shine, or anything in between. We're here to look at you, the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And you can tell by our tone of voice that this is not going to be a particularly fun one. You probably were able to surmise that from the intro as well. That's a deep drive to left field by Castellanos. It'll make it a 39-9 ball game. 38-9, sorry.
Yeah, don't give them more credit than they deserve, man.
Before we get into the episode, I did it shortly in the intro, but thank you to Greg Arthur. Thank you to Grandma. We're not going to stay. Thank you, Grandma. We're not going to stay here any longer than we have to. I can say it now without a jinx, and this perhaps makes it even tougher to swallow. I do not hold a high opinion of BYU as a football team. Their fans apparently are great people. Shout out to their fans for donating upwards of $10,000 to Avery Johnson's charity. That's probably the only upside to take away from this game is a lot of money went to charity. I still think BYU is bad. And as much as a loser mentality as this may seem to say, I genuinely and wholeheartedly believe that if you play this game a million times, this is the true 1 in a million result, because just the stretch from the end of the first half to like the first 5 minutes of the second half is perhaps the worst I have ever seen a single football team play. And a lot of that is based off of 1 in a million plays.
Yeah, man. I didn't say a single word from, I think, the first, what was it? Was the scoop and score? Yeah, the scoop and score was first. Yeah, from that moment on, I did not say a single word for the rest of the game. I stopped watching at the last turnover on downs. So, because I was like, maybe Jacob Canoe is going to get it going here. Ye of far too much faith, I suppose. But
yeah, I stopped watching. This is the only K-State game that I've ever just been unable to finish. It is more painful to me than the Iowa State game in 2020, because at least with the 2020 game, you can make a convincing argument that that game should have never been played. This BYU game, we just got skunked. And the bad thing is that I feel very little of it was controllable, which is why this is going to be a shorter episode. There's not going to be any game day grades, because what the hell is there to break down? I mean, there's nothing to break down. There's nothing schematically that any of the coordinators did wrong or right. I mean, yes, you could say that Connor Riley was too conservative when he had the ball, but do you really, no one can expect a borderline 28-point swing in like 3 minutes of game time. No one can see that coming.
Yeah, it's a bit unreasonable, in my humble opinion, to go into any game expecting that. I mean, like, it was complete shell shock. I mean, they even like shocked like their own crowd every time they like would cut to like their students after like a touchdown or something. Like, they were doing surrender cobras, and they were the ones that scored, and because they couldn't believe it either, because I mean, it was just constant like absolute perfect breaks after perfect breaks that like I've never seen before. Like the only thing I can really get on Clanderman for is I really didn't like his coverage call after the pick. at the very end of the first half. But like, I mean, that wasn't why we lost the game.
That's
Like,
not why we lost the game. And like in a vacuum, that's a perfectly fine coverage call. I
yeah,
mean,
but again, BYU ran like an absolutely perfect play against it, and Retzloff made a throw that he is not capable of making consistently. And why we basically were like, "Hey, we dare you to like make this tough throw," and he was like, "What if I was actually like Zach Wilson instead of Jake Retzloff for a second?" And he was. So, wow.
yeah, I think so. Here's a tiny bit of optimism for you. I don't think this is a game that is indicative of this year's team. You and I, I think every single year at this point, but we had a special focus on it this year. Every single team under the Kleiman era, and probably this one most, was bound to have the one what the hell game. I mean, the only one that you could argue didn't have that was the Big 12 championship season. But even then, at the time, Tulane was that game. It's only with hindsight that you can say, oh, wait, no, that wasn't like a what the hell law. No, in the moment, that was a genuine like soul crusher.
Honestly, I would say even now that remains in that sort of vein, because like we had every opportunity to win that game. We still just did not do it. I'm looking back through the schedule right now, and I was about to say 2021, but that Texas game was the one. But yeah, every year in the Kleiman era has just had this game. I guess I would have rather have been Tulane, honestly. Again, like with the gift of hindsight. But I mean, it's not an excuse, because I mean, despite a lot of it being, there's I shouldn't say out of our control. At the end of the day, like they're on the field, they can stop them. But it's it was, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. Just that like it was just a cascade of failures. Pardon my outlook, and uh, it was just a cascade of failures by on-field personnel and coaching, just being multiplied by BYU getting some of the most incredible strokes of luck that I've ever seen in a football game in my entire life. I mean, the punt return was just absurd. Like, because he should have been tackled probably 5 or 6 times, and I'd say almost all of them were not him actually making people miss. It was us whiffing. Like, we had a great last ditch attempt with Clannon to make a stop in that punt return. He just completely whiffed, which, to be fair, he's the punter. I'm not expecting him to like be a form tackle genius or anything, but I'd love it if he could at least like get in the way and like slow him down, like kick him or something. Like, you're a punter, dude. That's all you do.
Yeah, and the other part of this being like a 1 in a million game is, like I said, I don't think it's indicative of the staff or the players. This is a young team. I don't even think the most experienced K-State, I think you could probably put a bunch of NFL players on that field. And if they had that series of events happen to them at the end of that second half, they're probably not going to get up either. Like, that's just, I know everyone wants to talk about grit, you know, and being able to survive through any adversity. No, you're not getting up like, I'm sorry. I hate to be the realist sort of asshole here, but you're not getting up from the mat after that. And I knew that in that exact moment. But after that punt return, I'm like, well, that sucks.
Yeah, and something we haven't even touched on yet is the pre-snap penalties were just absolutely absurd in this game. We were a team that was among the least penalized in the country, I think, coming into this game. And I think there was a point in the game where you could say that it was maybe like the student section that was causing some of it, which I think sometimes that can be overblown, but I do think it can account for some.
Mhm.
Um, but there was just a point in the game where it was just absurd, the errors that we were making. It seemed like anytime anything good happened, I was getting called back for a penalty, or just some sort of small infraction that it almost felt like we were doing it to ourselves after a while, like having a pity party. And it's like, well, we can have, let's just have everybody feel bad for us now. Like, oh, DJ broke off like a 30-yard run. Oh, sorry, I lined up in the backfield or something. That was on purpose.
Yep.
Like I, it was just unbelievable, the cascade of events that went down in that game. Like I've never seen anything like it in my entire life, and I certainly hope I never will again. Of course, it would be K-State that it happens to. That goes without saying. But wow, this is the worst loss of the Kleiman era in my mind. I don't think it's close either.
I don't either.
Like some people bring up 2020 Iowa State, but that team sucked. This team is good. Like, this team has talent and like is significantly better. That Iowa State team, we had like what was it, like 55 players active when like the minimum to even play the game was like 53 or something. We shouldn't have even played the game. We did anyways. No, we had a full roster. Everybody was healthy. There was like no scratches or anything. And that happened to us. And there's zero excuses. I've been combing my memory, unfortunately, trying to think of more painful losses. The only one in my lifetime is probably Baylor 2012. And that's exclusively because of just the situation. And like there were some pretty crazy breaks in that game too, but not compared to this. I mean, other than that, I'm trying to think about other games that hurt this bad. Like there was a Nebraska game where we got killed during the Prince era. Like they dropped like 70 on us. That hurt. But like
Yeah,
those teams also weren't very good. So
and I think the worst part is that most like bad losses at some point like just bell curve into being funny. This one never did that. Like because like Oklahoma State was it 21 or 22?
I
21.
think that was 21 with Jaron Lewis.
Yeah, with Jaron Lewis. That one, you and I were watching that game, and it took like 2.5 quarters. But we just broke and started thinking it was hilarious because at that point it objectively was.
Yeah. I think it was I think what broke me in that game was the Jaron Lewis getting sacked, just throws the ball to Deuce like haphazardly, and Deuce just somehow houses it. Like that, I think that might have been what broke me in that game, because that was actually just really stupid, but it worked. And yeah, this game didn't have that moment. It was just a never-ending cycle of just despair and ineptitude. Like this felt like watching. I'll put it like this: it feels like this game, I would imagine, is probably what it kind of felt like to watch K-State pre-Bill Snyder. Just the other team just absolutely smacked us around. Not statistically, but on the field, they like just had our number in every conceivable way, and we just kept making stupid mistakes after stupid mistakes. And like it felt like destiny that we were gonna suck. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what it felt like once we got to the end of the second quarter, which was absolutely nuts because up until that point, we were dominating that game.
Yep.
Other than the scoreboard, like we had complete and total control of that game. And then just one snap of the finger and it just all went away. The moment where everything changed was probably the Brendan Mott sack, I think, that forced them to take a field goal. Everything from that point forward is just pit of despair.
Yeah, and this is something I want to address. People are going to get all up in arms about Avery in this game. Firstly, before the incidents, multiple, plural, he actually looked surprisingly poised in a really, really tough environment, which I think that was the main concern was, how is Avery going to respond to a raucous environment at the very start? The answer to that question is he started off really, really well, making the correct read, being efficient, taking care of the ball. And I think that's what we should expect from Avery. And then whenever the incidents, plural, started happening, he started pressing. And I don't think that makes him a bad quarterback. I don't think that means that he got overly rattled past what anyone else in that situation would. He just watched basically the equivalency of like a cartel execution video of the team. I don't really know if I would have been. I'm a man. I'm 24. I'm not sure if I survived that. I didn't. I gave up. I quit after 3 quarters.
Yeah. It's a game of what ifs, I guess. I mean, going back to those first few drives, I mean, we should have scored several times. I mean, Dante Cephas broke free and Avery overshot him by just a little bit. I know that he overshot Jace by just like a couple of inches at one point. We had plenty of opportunities to score. Keegan Johnson should have had a touchdown that first drive, but that was called back for, I think, illegal formation or something like that.
It was snap infraction because Hecht
twitched. Yeah. So that, like, another one, like, and side note, Keegan Johnson is probably the only guy on the offense that I think had a game without like really any blemishes. Like, I would say, like shout out Keegan Johnson. Oh, and good noodle sticker to Chris Tennant for scoring all of our points as well, not missing a field goal. So it's shocking that in maybe the worst performance of the Kleiman era, that the one guy that like gets out of it kind of scot-free is the kicker that people want to replace for 3 years. So, it is ironic, isn't it? But good on him for being a consistent force on the special teams for K-State. Really happy with that.
I'll give Dylan Edwards a flower, because like he was one of the few that I think never had like that, or at least from what I watched, he never had that moment of giving up. And the main reason I say that is, I missed something, didn't I?
Oh, well, I'm just laughing because you know how many touches he had in this game?
Oh, God.
7. Again. Exactly 7. Yet again.
I was going to say that he did a really good job blocking on like a quarterback jet veer that Avery had.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, it was. Oh, my God.
But no, once again, exactly 7 touches on offense for Mr. Dylan Edwards. In the exact same form as last week, 6 carries, 1 reception. In fact, the only week he has not had 7 offensive touches was Tulane, in which he had 5. So there's that. If nothing else, we are being very consistent with the amount we are getting the ball to Dylan Edwards. And so my disappointment remains resolute and steadfast with Connor Riley and his apportionment of offensive touches to Dylan Edwards. Just give him the ball more, man.
Please.
He had 6 carries for 42 yards. Just give him the ball.
Anyway, so my biggest takeaway from this game is that there is no takeaway. This is a game that you memory hole and then hope it does not cost you when it comes time to determine who's going to Arlington. This game becomes a whole hell of a lot easier to swallow if we beat Oklahoma State in this coming week. Because if we lose to Oklahoma State, that is signed and sealed. We're not going to Arlington.
Yeah, that's curtains, man.
Yeah. So this loss becomes a lot easier to stomach because I said it in the preview episode that the way K-State loses is if they let things snowball and they get in their own head. I did not expect this level of snowballing.
You were spot on in that prediction, man. Spot on.
But I also said that anyone can beat anyone at their home stadium this year. The Big 12, as much as I don't think BYU is good, because I still think they're ass. I still think they're a really bad football team. Anyone can beat anyone in the Big 12 this year. And that's why you can't afford to lose pace with the people who are viewed at the top of the conference. You can't afford to lose pace with Iowa State. You need to, or not Iowa State, Oklahoma State. You need to grab the tiebreaker between K-State and Oklahoma State because you don't play Utah. You do play Iowa State, but they're going to get to 7 wins and then die because that's what Iowa State does. But like I said, this becomes a whole lot easier to swallow if you're able to beat Oklahoma State in this upcoming week to keep the Big 12 championship hopes alive. Because outside Oklahoma State game, Cincinnati has looked conscious, which I didn't expect. They just skunked Houston, which, speaking of, Houston is not good. Iowa State still could be anything. Oklahoma State, it depends on if you want to count Utah as non-con or not.
Yeah, I'm going to put a moratorium on calling teams that we face specifically bad because it seems that any time that we do that, things go very poorly in the upcoming matchup for the Cats. So I actually find Houston to be a formidable opponent.
Was it you that projected the Houston loss, or was that Lucas?
That was me that said it would happen. I didn't say they were good. I thought it might happen because I picked that as our meltdown of the year. But I was ambitious thinking that we would make it that far without melting down.
Yeah. Anyway, do you have any takeaways before we let all these beautiful tens of people that are listening to this episode go?
No, I don't have any takeaways from this stupid game.
All right. I agree. So thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00.
I'm at Connor Bouncilor, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store, as well as supporters link both on our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to live it to you, the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.